million in 1 year. Usually the state does not require you to do that. They usually allow you to have a plan. But I prepared a very aggressive budget where, to the best I could, I eliminated some of these. So for example, in the budget that you will see, I eliminated the deficit in 230, 235, and those were moved to the general fund, okay? So when you see the general fund expenses, just keep in mind that it has at least $500,000 of expenses from those funds to help get rid of those deficits. Because eventually we'll have to do that anyway, and I thought we might as well be proactive and clear those deficits out, and then just try to, you know, put it all in one pot and deal with it in that regards. The next statement you have, if I'm not mistaken, is a revenue sheet. If there is in the same order. And what I did, which was crucial to the budget, you know, we have to first figure out, I think your next one, is it not the, okay, this is it. Okay. I didn't label these because I said we make some changes, you know, then present you a professional package at that time. But the next sheet is basically telling where all of the monies are coming from that comes into the city. And I was able to go back and look at 2013 and compare the two, and you can see the differences as you go down. So the general fund is made up of many different departments. You'll see them all. The funds come in for different departments and different activities. But these are all of the different sources that we could receive money for the general fund. And that's listed on the account name, start with property taxes on down to transfer. The other thing too is that traditionally, monies should not be transferred into the general fund. It should be transferred from the general fund to subsidize various programs and other programs that's going on. As I went through this, and you will see the same, is that there was a lot of transfers in the other funds, and I'm not sure where they were going, you know, and technically transfer is a paper item anyway. It's not any new monies, it's just moving it from one department or one fund to the other. But if I could draw your attention to the general fund revenue line, where the revenue for last year, for 2013, and these are unaudited numbers. These are not numbers that have been audited by the state or anyone else. They came straight from the financial records that were in the office. It's $12,618,067. And the projected revenue resources at this point for 2014, which is very conservative. There's no soft dollars in here. And also note that as far as the county, those dollar amounts are given to us, such as property tax and the local government and so on. So what's projected that I could come up with was $11,842,186. The difference being about $775,000 in the revenue, which is significant. And then as you go down your statement, you can see what comprises that number. And one of the biggest number towards the bottom of that section is other income. The $212,000 there basically represents a one-time receipt from the Bureau of Workers' Comp. Last year they rebated all of the communities. There was some windfall, they called it. And the city received close to $200,000. So, of course, that was a one-time, and it was not projected for 2014. So you have that $212,000 and some other little insignificant amounts. So if you go down the property taxes, you can see, and like I say, these are numbers that came straight from the state auditor. They all add up to the $775,000. Does everybody follow me so far? Am I going too fast? Okay.
Irene, could we just question,
yes.
Other income right below it is railroad retribution. We're not getting any more money from the railroad anymore, so that's not going to be ever.
Okay, that was a discussion. In fact, I had checked with the legal department to find out if we would, and they weren't really sure.
It would be nice if we could convince them we needed it. That ended.
Okay, so that will come out, I mean, but I don't know where the documents are per se, that, with that information. And that's what I was saying, I was trying not to put in any dollars that were uncertain, but they sort of felt that may be ongoing. So that's 60,000 more that will come out. The computer fee fund, like I said, these pretty much speak for themselves. These, as you can see, the 2013 compared to what we projected, which was a little lower than the 2013 number. We just wanted to, be conservative in our revenue.
Irene, aren't we gonna get screwed on the homestead rollback since they changed the requirements for that and it's...
Well, basically, these are the numbers that they have put out. Of course, they're all subject to change. I mean, even the property taxes, this is their best guess. They estimate that this city receive about 82% of what,
right.
value. Of course, as the year goes on and people don't pay, even that number will change. But this is their estimate that they sent out. So, like I say, these are the estimates, and maybe by the time we do another budget in May, we may have some closer numbers for sure.
Well, by then, won't we already have the property tax from the first collection?
Yes, there's 5 advances that come during the year. The first 2 have come, and there's 1 due in May, and then like July and August and October, something like that.
Then
but they
if they
spread
do a
them out.
tax lien sale, there's another one that might come.
Exactly, right. And the same thing happened with Rita. During the middle of the year, they reconcile their books from the previous year, and if your experience rate, they charge a 5% overhead, which I thought was high because I was accustomed to like about 3%. But anyway, if the overhead does not pan out to be, I project, which is not in here, but I project that we may get about 60,000 from that. But again, it's a variable number, and I didn't want to put it in here. So if that happens, that'll replace the redistribution, retribution. Okay. So, like I said, I don't want to read to you, but as we go down, there's the pension fund for the police. And if you notice, which I want to bring to your attention, you see where it says transfer in, Fund 215. Those are the numbers that I was saying with paper transactions. So the transfer in, the only place that it could come from is the general fund. So I did not budget any transfer in. I basically budgeted to break even for that fund, which I was saying earlier, where there may have been 7 or 8 policemen or officers charged to that fund, but in doing so, it created a deficit. So I didn't charge them this time. That's why the general fund is up. Right, and so basically as we go through, I mean, this is the whole thought behind what was going on here. And you'll see that where we have these transfer ins, you'll see them blank, because I didn't see that we need to take money out of the general fund to support any of the other funds, other than those contracted, like the senior citizen, senior center, those, unless there's a grant or something.
What's MHSD, just for the heck of it, that has the blank in it, in the center of the other page? I'm still on the first page.
Oh, you're still on the first page. Okay. For the Maple Heights Police Department, is that where you're looking?
I'm looking like right under where it says fines and forfeitures, there's MHSD, and then there's a $9,000, but then there's a blank under 2014.
Right, again, those were some fees, and those that I didn't know, I left them blank.
Okay.
If I wasn't sure, because most fees are very...
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, most fees are, maybe the mayor can help me out with that, the MHSD fees.
Maybe. I'm sure this has to be.
Maple Heights something fees here.
It's Maple Heights.
Well, that's why I left it blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to, and like I say, time really didn't permit us to do what we wanted to do with this. So, in instances like that where I did not know, I left it blank, because it's better to add it later when we do the May budget than to overestimate this time. So as you peruse this, basically, that was the thought behind this. Most of the transfer ins I left blank. because again, it would just increase the deficit in the general fund, so. The other thing I want to point out also, like the 700 series, those are pass-through dollars, and we don't usually result in any benefit from those. It's money that comes in our, we like custodians of those dollars, such as escrows and the fees for the courts and some of those things that go out. So they really do not impact this statement. I left them there because that had been the tradition.
Can you tell us what page you're on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just talking right now, but I sort of flipped to the back.
We just flipping and we just looking.
Oh, okay, right. No, go ahead, because like I said, I didn't want to
Can
just
I
read to.
ask you?
Do you want to, I was going to interrupt and find out, would you like us to go through all of this and then come back and ask
Whatever's
questions, or do you
better
want to
for
be
you.
interrupted?
I don't have a problem. Whatever's easier
Okay.
and make it more clear for you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Then what? It's between you and the mayor. Last year, we actually passed an ordinance, and I'm hoping this will help. When we were assessing the garbage fees, we were assessing, you know, a fee per each house until we kind of realized that maybe there's some 2 units and each unit should be assessed a fee. Is that included in with this? Because we projected probably about $30,000 or $40,000 more by assessing per unit rather than just this, like a single family home. Because if we are doing that, I'm hoping that the garbage assessments might go up a little bit more.
Let's see, the solid waste is on page.
Second page.
Thank you.
Welcome.
251.
Right.
And so these numbers, again, were taken from some actual numbers, and they're low.
Last year, and
It
they
could be
didn't do it
low.
last year. We're going to start it this year.
Right, and so this may be low,
Right,
because that's
okay.
why I said I was trying to be very conservative with the revenue.
Okay.
And then I also looked at the assessments that county had predicted based on their receipts and payments.
Right, we just need to make sure that those assessments are actually going on those 2-family homes.
Well, right, now that part I don't know. I mean, I can't say
No, I know.
if the homes have been assessed for the 2. I'm just looking at it from a revenue standpoint.
I get it.
Now, the mix of that, I can't say whether they're doing it or not.
Who would be the right person?
I don't know,
That
the
would-
building or building department, someone,
I really don't at this time. That was under Eric Dean. I don't know if you ever followed.
It passed in order for it to start in January. I think we passed it like maybe August, September, thinking that it would bring in some revenue, and he says, well, the next assessment wouldn't happen until, you know, the January bill.
Because the assessments are
But if he didn't,
filed.
and he left, so I don't know if he
Yeah,
did that.
if it was put into implementation, remember, we've had a lot more new foreclosures and abandoned homes, so even if it did go in and it came up, it might have went down because of all the new foreclosures.
And if it didn't go in, we still have a chance to put it on
Yeah.
the July,
Well, it goes in,
because it's a year behind, and we
I'll-
retroactive.
right.
I'll
No,
have contact him and see if he followed through with it.
He did, I mean, he filed the assessment. The assessments are filed the second Monday of September every year. So the assessment was filed. But now in terms of the enforcement is what I'm saying, I don't know who's enforcing.
Well, if it's on the bill, then it's, we either get it or we don't, but as long as it's on the bill,
Right.
then that's a good thing.
Yeah, but I did go through the assessments and I did see, and that's where I pulled this number from, in terms of the dollar amount.
So then that's probably correct.
Yeah, but if that's how we put on all the garbage bills and all the grass cutting bills, I don't know if that was included in their total. We're seeing that.
Solid waste collection. Can that monies be used in the general fund? Yeah, it says.
Actually, it is. It's not really,
Transferred
it's
into
not
the
really
general.
restricted. I mean, it's the city's money. So if there's anything left over, because like I say, you know, the waste management bill is in excess of $1 million. So I think most of that will be eaten up this year because there's a couple months delinquency. So I think with that and that, it will probably use up most of the 1.5, and considering that that could go up or down. So I think it's gonna be pretty close to break even for year 2014.
And we also have a new contract to review.
At the end of the year, I think it expires.
It's coming
Oh,
up.
is it 15? No, it's this year. It expires
It's this year.
Right.
We were going to talk about the possibility of reducing some of our bills by adding recycling or different kinds of bins. That's to be done.
Okay. Yeah, I did check. It just expired in December.
Okay.
So the rumor that we was in arrears with solid waste management,
That wasn't a rumor.
that wasn't a rumor.
No, it wasn't a rumor. I think it was about 3 months.
So that solid waste collection money was put in the general fund for wages and benefits?
No,
No.
no, the solid waste collection is tied to the property taxes. You know, years ago, it was being collected internally at City Hall. Everyone in the city either mailed in their rubbish fee money, they were sent a bill, or they came in and paid it. So under a previous administration, they decided to do away with that policy, and they had the county tied to the property taxes. So when the 33% devaluation hit, that money went down. Then when you lose new foreclosures, abandoned homes, vacant, whatever, bank owned, it takes another hit. So it's very unreliable. So anything tied to the property taxes has taken a major hit.
So it would be beneficial if we went back to the old system of collection ourselves. Would that be a big?
Certainly would be something to look at, Councilman. I believe that, you know, that could be a more accurate way of people who actually, like I believe it was your constituents that were here that evening that said, you know, we're actually paying for houses where people are still living and hanging out and throwing rubbish out. We're actually paying for them.
And we would have control on single family, double.
Just like we did before. We always knew in the past, we always knew if someone was not paying or non-compliance, we would then forward that information. First it was BFI who had the contract, and then they would serve notice that would go to the route foreman who would give it to the driver, and they would serve notice on that home and not pick up that trash.
We should look into that.
We should. You know, at the time, you said previous administration, and at the time, it was just a big, huge, gigantic problem. And that seemed to be the only way to control it, because people were just plopping their garbage wherever they thought someone else was going to be picking it up. So it worked for a while, but if you need to go back, we can do that.
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Jackson?
but part of the reason why it went there, if I remember right, is people who weren't paying, who the driver got to notice to bypass the house. The people would just go out and take their trash and take it across the street and put it on somebody's
That's what I
house.
just said.
So, pardon?
That's
Yeah,
what we
so we still have people who weren't paying, but were still getting serviced. So it's not like if we go back that we would collect all the trash money that's due, because they would do the same thing over again. Not to say it's not a bad idea, but it's not as cut and dry as just go back and we're going to get this extra money.
Yeah, but you wouldn't get the cuts with the property tax, like the mayor was saying.
Pardon, we wouldn't get the what?
You wouldn't get that brought down with the property tax, like the mayor was saying. And I think you could control that a little better. You know, but people do squeal on each other.
Yes, we did.
Madam President, we actually, when that happened, and it did happen, we actually had someone open the bags and found out where the trash originated from, and then went and cited that homeowner.
It was usually the building department, because I remember doing that.
We also had one employee at the time who was doing all of that checking and double checking. I could see.
Like,
Go ahead.
President, Tony, idea about us council persons going, looking at the neighborhood for vacant houses for sale, like my District 52, I think. So either way, I might have missed a few, but right there is the first signal. Who should pay and who shouldn't pay. Run the address and there it is. Everybody else should have paid.
Okay, we are digressing just a little bit.
It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had a question for Irene. Page 1, 42-180, the local government is showing a surplus or a projected increase in revenue. Is that a solid number?
These are numbers that are given to us from county, and you would notice that there's the same numbers that's on this sheet.
Right.
So, and it is as solid as,
All right, because they like to cut us.
I understand, but supposedly this reflects the distribution. They do a county-wide, and they send out a form that has every municipality listed that's in the county to show how they
Are
spread.
they allowed to change that throughout the year?
I'm sure, like I say, the government money comes in from different revenue sources, and if their sources go down, just like our property tax or whatever, you know, it can. And so, that, you know, like you say, if I don't use this number, they will send back to me. So that's the one thing that they monitor to make sure that these numbers for general property and like the local government, if they're not their numbers, they will send it back. And the good thing is, if I may, that, you know, the budget is not static, you know. I mean, it's a budget, and you can change it whenever you want. And so, and that's the, I think, thought that we should work with, that as things change during the year, we need to send an amended budget. And of course, the last opportunity we have to do that is December 31st to sort of catch up and correct or, you know, revise anything that did not go as planned. So that's why I say the one thing about the budget, you can revise it anytime you want to. So if the numbers are not coming in, you know, should, and hopefully through the finance committee, as Richard, Councilman Richard and I meet, you know, we'll be able to monitor once we get our hands around things.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because I'm also conservative also, and I would like to see it based on the 2013 number, just so you know that it's not there, but if you have to list it, then you have to list it. I understand that. But, you know, it's, if we're going to rely on it and then, you know, you get snookered down the road.
I do agree with that. I do agree. And I just know that, you know, internally on our internal documents, they do not have to be commensurate with what we have to submit under the guidelines for county. Right. So, you know, we want to work on, say, 2 different budgets. I mean, that's our prerogative. And we can establish an internal management budget for us and send them what they need to meet their guidelines and deadlines. And if there's something you prefer, I mean, you know, we can have a working session with the finance committee once we sort of, you know, see. And I think we're at a point now where things are sort of stabilizing, where we know what 2013, we have all the information to compile. But the auditors were calling this morning, they're still working on the 2013.
Right.
And so, but by now, as I had mentioned a couple of times, after 60 days, usually most bills have come in. And so we passed that 60-day mark, so now we should be able to really feel comfortable with whatever our 2013 activity was at this point, and started getting some good numbers together.
Just a question, Irene. I thought the estate tax died.
Yeah, it did, but for some, like I say, I have an official letter, and we get $35,000. And it would dribble in, you never know. I mean, there may have been some that bequeathed a long time ago or something, you know. But as a constant, steady source of income, it has that and the cat tax, both of them have. But we still get cat tax also. You just don't know, and so they go, oh, but that's some cat tax, you know, or state tax.
If possible, instead of using the little short phrases that mean something that some of us might not know.
I'm sorry. The commercial activity tax is what the CAT stands for.
You should have just told them it was a tax on cash.
Well, I think I know it wasn't that. I don't know what it was, but not that. And also, when y'all talking, could you please tell us what page and what numbers when you're...
I apologize.
I mean, everyone, even
We were
me
just
around the table.
we were just talking about local government, and if you look on your sheet,
It's on the first
estate
page.
tax is right above it on the first page.
I see it now.
Okay.
Like I said, I knew that some of these numbers may or may not, so.
Okay, but now we're going to go back to
Oh,
the third page, is that
I
where you
think that's
stopped?
what we were, but like I say, I wasn't going to just read these to you, I'm just trying to highlight the whole process and my methodology for preparing the budget. And of course, the bond retirement, which is at the top of the third page, Fund 390, as is listed here. There's also money that comes in from county, which you will see through the property tax, which you'll see on your certificate of estimated resource. These are numbers that they send to us that's projected for the year. And as you can see, that is a little more than what the actual was for 2013 was 694, and so this year is 634, about $60,000 different. And of course, like I say, the transfer ends, I did not budget monies in those, because again, it would have to come from the general fund. So, the other thing that I'll just point out to you, where it says healthcare fund,
Yeah.
those are the employee deductions, and those are pretty accurate in terms of what we project. But this does not incorporate the new plan. I decided, again, to leave that alone until we get something. So the numbers in here may be high for the, when you get to the appropriations. I just basically use last year's number, so the expenses will be higher and the revenue lower. So I hope at some point it reverse. What else I note? The others are just, regular. And as I had said about the 700 expenses, for the most part, those are passed through, which usually come to our office, and we hold them to send them on to another institution. The DARE fund, as you see it here, one of the things that you will see on the financial statements eventually is a change in the fund numbers, because the series are designated for certain types of activities. And the DARE program is really an operating grant. It's a grant, but it's not a pass-through per se. We use it to operate. So I will probably move that out of the 700 series. I'm flipping my page. So we're at the last page, flipping to page 4. Okay, so the 2013 revenue totaling unaudited was $24,193,352. Like I say, those numbers came straight from the financial statements. And what we just discussed was like 19 million. And again, half of that was to, due to, excuse me, sorry. On page 3, under the trust and agency, where you see the bond escrow receipts for building deposit of $2 million. There was an ordinance passed, I think, when I first started, so we don't expect to take in monies. And even if we did, it's just a pass-through. It doesn't really benefit the city. So, but it rolls up into that $5 million on the back, so I don't want everybody to panic and think that we're $5 million short in terms of operating revenue. The true number that we need to look at is the general fund, because most of the other funds are self-sustaining funds. Revenue comes in to support them, either through grants or some other donation or what have you. But the general fund is what we really need to really focus on in terms of our overage and under.
Irene,
Yes.
through Jackie to Irene and the mayor, can you clarify or clear up a rumor that I've heard more than a few times, that we actually have used some of the escrow money to pay bills and or payroll?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, that was one reason I was running a little late. I was running a tape. I actually going through the checks, all of the 2013 checks. I didn't go back past that. And in 2013, it was about $2 million. I actually ran a tape of the checks. And even on the books, from what I could see on the unaudited expenses, it was about $2 million. And so I looked at the checks, and the checks are in sequential order, and there was no checks made out to anyone other than, you know, a refund. I didn't see anything to Waste Management or to the mayor or, you know,
Thank you,
interview.
that's just to clarify, because there's been some rumors that have been flying
Well,
around.
I did go back, I think it was the council meeting or some meeting we had that someone mentioned that. So I did go back to check, and I double checked again today. I had Gary Fargo helping me run the tape. So we sort of went through all of the 213 checks to make sure, yes.
Ms. Kroll, I think something that's difficult to understand, perhaps you could explain to us, is the difference between what's on paper and what's actually happening in the account, the physical dollars that are being brought in and spent. Because from one view, it's true to say we never spent any of the escrow funds on paper to anywhere else. Yet when we had a $1 million escrow amount of money is with us at any point in time, but we only had $200,000 in the bank, what happened to the other $800,000 we're supposed to be holding on for everyone? So could you explain to us how it's kind of different on paper than it is in the actual account with all of the funds summed together?
Well, it's not really difficult to explain. It is not a paper transaction. The deposits come over from the building department. Georgette Hodge brings over the receipts, you know, and we deposit them right into the bank. And we have a physical checkbook, so it's not a paper, it's an actual transaction in and out. And as I had stated from the checks that we ran a tape on right before it came over, it was like close to $2 million. This is just from 2013. And this shows, like I say, these are unaudited records, really about 2.1. So that could be your 200,000 that you're talking about. I mean, the difference, you know. But it's not a paper transaction. When you say paper transaction in terms of accounting, I think a memo entries, non-cash, that's what we usually refer to as a paper transaction. But these are cash transactions.
What is our cash on hand right now in the bank?
I'm sorry, I did not bring that with me. I mean, we have at least, well, we have several accounts, just about 6 different accounts. So we have an operating account, and we have 2 operators in escrow account, the mayor's account, and I apologize, I don't have the numbers with me, but I mean, they're sufficient for what we need right now, because we really have not been spending money other than payroll and emergency type situations for the use and the operation of safety for the city, you know, like salt and repairs to the police vehicles and the fire, for those kinds of things. But I brought my own paper clips in, I didn't order, but we probably will order a few supplies, but basically we're on a no spend, no frill, so to maintain, because we have some, you know, large indebtedness that we have to pay for as the bond comes due in June 1st and December 1st, and PWC and OWDA, and, you know, then we have 3 payrolls in May. So I'm just trying to hold on to cash. It's one thing to have a fund balance, which is paper, but it's another thing to have cash in the bank when you write the check so they don't bounce. So you have to balance the 2. Even if you have the appropriations, if you have no cash to support them, that's paper.
So when you get money in for an escrow account, does that money get deposited into the general